And good morning. We are live and we are recording. So happy Monday, everybody. Hope you all had a great weekend. Today we are going to talk about NLP. So NLP is neuro linguistics training. Neuro is your brain, right? Neuro linguistics is your language or, your words. And P is programming. So neuro linguistics programming. Your programming is like all of your thoughts, the way we're trained to think and the things that we do and our actions. Those are our programs that we've received throughout our life. So NLP is another one of those courses that I've studied and spent time and researched and learned about. And it's absolutely fascinating. So there is a whole entire course for NLP. The one I went through took about 8 weeks. So, I mean, it's a whole big thing. So we're really just gonna touch base on it so that you guys can get the idea and the concept. Um, because I think it's something everybody should know. So, um, P, programming, NLP, neuro linguistics programming, NLP. So you're gonna get 3 different tools about NLP today. And then we're going to talk about just really what it is, what it's all about. So, um, the big idea here is that we don't react to reality directly. Okay. Um, we act, we react to reality based on the things we've experienced in our lives, based on the mindset that we're in when the whatever happens. And how we're feeling about the whole world in that moment, right? So we are never, just like we've talked about, your mind makes up a movie, right? So we don't ever react to things based on what reality is. We react to things based on our experience. Um, we don't have to have magic to change that, right? To change the way we process our thoughts, to change the way we perceive the reality around us. It's not magic. It's just a matter of awareness, generating awareness as to why we think the way we think and how do we start making changes. Um, it's very important to start to understand the way people think, right? And so this is going to be a little bit more of a psychology course, class versus metaphysical, but I think they very much go hand in hand. But there is a lot of science, lots and lots of science that goes into the development of the NLP, of the neuro linguistics programming. So, um, the first concept, the main thing that we talk about with NLP is that everything starts with a positive intention. Okay. Um, Even bad things, they start with a positive intention. So let's use the example of Mr. Homeless guy living on the street. He's hungry, right? So he needs something to eat. So he's got the intention of feeding himself. That is a positive intention. His desire is to eat. He needs food. He's going to feed himself. That's a positive intention. And then what happens is we do what we can with the information that we have at hand and with the resources we have at hand. So, he's not doing too great in the world. And so his solution to his positive intention, he needs to eat, he's hungry, is to go to the corner store down here and rob it and get himself some bread. And so, he's not thinking real clearly and everything. And he goes in there and pretends like he has a gun and, holds up the corner store and gets himself his loaf of bread and goes on about his business. And, um, somebody else comes in the mean why he's trying to hold up the store and they also have a weapon and, their positive intention is to stop what's happening. Right. But then they shoot the guy And so now he's injured, and the guy that shot him had a positive intention. He wasn't like, "Oh, I'm going to go shoot somebody today." When he went to that gas station to get that loaf of bread, he wasn't like, "Oh, I'm going to," there was nothing bad in his mind and his thought process. His intention was to feed himself, which started with the positive, right? So it can be a chain reaction of bad things that happen after that. But the whole thought is, it doesn't matter what it is in the world. It happens because it comes from the basis of a positive intention, right? So maybe that intention is to protect yourself, or maybe that intention is to um feed yourself, whatever that may be. When people do things, and this goes for all people in all situations, it always starts with a positive intention. Everybody's thought processes. It starts with a positive intention. What is the positive intention? Could be anything, right? And then they do the best they can with what they have at hand and the resources that they have at hand. So positive intentions don't equal good behavior or positive outcomes, right? That just means that somebody had something in their mind that was a positive intention, and that's where it starts. And then based on their situation and their version of reality is going to determine how they go about reaching that positive intention, and whether or not it's a good behavior and actions that get them there, or maybe it's not, right? But it all starts with a positive intention. um what happens is, we live our lives, and throughout our lives we get programmed. Okay, all the experiences we have give us a program. So maybe you grew up in a house where mom and dad were fighting all the time, right? And so maybe they just constantly were going at each other. So as a child, you learn to be quiet, to stay out of it, to avoid that conflict, right? Your positive intention as a child there is to protect yourself and to be safe from that. Now, it shouldn't necessarily be the child's positive intention that has to be the one that act, but we don't get to pick that in life, right? So you grow up in this household, and it's constantly chaotic. There's constantly fighting. There's things like that going on. It's nonstop, right? You're going to be programmed yourself to, first of all, accept that as acceptable behavior, right? Because you're seeing your mom and dad act like that every day. So it must be an acceptable behavior. You get programmed to understand that that is an acceptable behavior. And then not only that, but you get programmed to respond to that, right? And maybe it's going and hiding in your bedroom, or maybe it's, you know, putting your head under a pillow and screaming into the pillow, or maybe it's just to be quiet and go sit in the corner and color. Whatever that is, that is a program that you received when you were a child. Now, this can go a billion different ways, right? Maybe your mom and dad both, you grew up in a family where they worked really hard, and they both worked, 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. All right. So you didn't get a lot of that family connection growing up. So you get programmed in that sort of a situation where, work is more important than family, and that's acceptable, and that you should work hard every day. You should get up and you should be gone 7 days a week going to work. And you should do that, for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. And that is what's the most important thing in this world. That's a program that we receive when we're children, and we live in that sort of an environment. So what we have to understand for ourselves is that all the experiences we've had throughout our lives determine where we're at right now and how we respond to reality. Okay. So if you're somebody that grew up in that house that was really argumentative, right? And you've got that programming, and today you walk into a friend's house and there's two people arguing, right? Your brain is automatically going to pull your experiences up, and it's going to say, okay, when two people are arguing, what do I need to do? I need to get the fuck out of the way. I need to not be seen right now. I need to go hide somewhere. So you're not responding to what's going on in front of you. You're responding to your experiences. So you instantly go in to do that thing that you were trained to do, and to hide or to run away from that situation or to get out of that situation, or whatever that programming looked like for you, you know? So that's not coming from the reality of the situation right now. Maybe all you needed to do was say, "Hey, are you guys okay? You know, what's going on in here?" And maybe it just was a conversation that got a little heated and they needed somebody to say something to kind of snap that apart so they could get back on good, positive terms, right? But we don't know that because we don't give the opportunity to think through that, to say, what does this reality actually look like? What we do is we pull our programming. We got our programming, we pull our programming, and we respond based on that programming. Um, we do the same thing with patterns. We do the same thing with procrastinating, people pleasing, perfectionism, doom scrolling, sitting there staring at your phone for hours. Those are programs that we've received throughout our lives that give us a way to avoid what we actually need to be doing, what we need to be looking at, and what the reality is, right? Instead of dealing with the argument, we get on our phone and we scroll because we don't want to do it. Instead of people pleasing, we procrastinate and don't take care of ourselves and go off and do something completely different. We're not responding to reality, we are responding to our programming. So, the three things that we're going to talk about with NLP that can help you to start recognizing these patterns and start making changes. Um, there's three different states, I guess, or not states, but three different key things that we use. So, the first one is we learn to reframe. The second one is that we learn to shift our state of mind. And the third thing is that we learn an anchor. Okay, so those are the three things I'm going to teach you guys today. Um, remember that we're okay. So remember also that the state of mind you're in when something happens also very much affects what program gets pulled forward. Okay, say you're having a bad day and you're having a bad day, and then you see two people arguing, right? You're going to have a very different reaction to that situation than if you're in a really good mood and you see two people arguing. All right, the path that your brain pulls to help you deal with that situation is going to be different. So, if you're already upset with somebody and you're already not having a good day and you see two people arguing, it's going to be a trigger for you. It's going to be a spiral kind of a situation where, and not everybody, not every situation. I'm just trying to kind of use that for an example. But, you're going to automatically go to that path of fear and getting out of that avoidance, right? Just like you did when you're a kid, you're going to go run and hide in the corner and get out of there. Now, if you're in a really good mood, you might say, "Oh, well, here I made some brownies for you guys. Maybe this can help the situation." So, the state of mind that you're in when these kind of things happen very much determines how you're going to respond to the situation. So, my papers got mixed up. Sorry. All right. So your state of mind. So same situation, different states equals different outcomes, right? You can start to shift your state of mind. So what we're talking about here when we're shifting our state of mind, right? Is we're going to start to recognize, okay, when I see we're going to start to recognize those triggers, right? So when I see two people arguing, um what is my mind story? What is the story that the mind movie that my brain makes up? We're going to acknowledge that. We're going to say, okay, when I see two people arguing or whatever the situation may be that you're working, maybe we're not talking about something with people. We could be talking about financial blocks. We could be talking about procrastination. We could be talking about people pleasing and want to make sure everybody's, happy and good and well. We could be talking about um self-destruction. Why am I self-sabotaging everything that I do? I'm trying to do this good thing, but I know I just screwed it up and I pretty much did it on purpose because I didn't care. So we can be talking about all sorts of things here. Um, but what we have to do is we have to start to acknowledge those triggers and how our mind is making that movie up. Let's talk about money. Money is a really good example to use. Maybe you grew up in a family that was not very wealthy. Maybe they were very poor. Maybe you guys struggled to even know what the kids were going to have for dinner when you were growing up. So you have a program of there's not enough money, right? You have a program of scarcity. You have a program of um, poor mindset. I can't go buy a whole case of toilet paper. I can only buy one roll at a time. I can't have nice things because I wasn't born with a lot of money. These are all programs that our mind can get that are only that. They are only programs. But the universe responds to our program. It responds to our thoughts, it responds to our deeds, and it responds to our actions. So if we're constantly in a state of poor and not enough, and then there's not ever going to be enough. So when I'm talking about these things, it's important to understand it can be in anything that has to do with your life. It doesn't have to be money or, you know, your how you interact with two people that are arguing. So take this as a very broadly, all right? But you've got to acknowledge what those programs are and how you're responding to them. So what we want to do is we want to teach our body to change its state. Okay? So instead of I am poor, I can't afford nice things. How about I am saving my money up so that I can afford this nice thing, right? And you have to start making those changes because the more you say I can't, never could, the more you won't. If you are saying every day, I can't afford that, I can't afford that, I can't afford that, then you're not ever going to be able to afford that. Like you are speaking that into existence. You are making that your reality. So if you start changing that thought process and changing that state of mind to, instead of I can't afford that, I'm saving up for this. This works with our health too. Oh, I can't do that because I don't feel good. Well, how about I'm in the process of healing, so I need to take time to do that slower than what somebody else would. It's not that you can't, because the more you can't, the less you can. All right. So, reframing our thoughts and changing where we're at in the moment with whatever that may be is very important. Look at where you're doing this at. Look at the places that this is popping up in your life. And I know when I started learning all this, it was everywhere in my life. Um, but your thoughts, your deeds, your actions, your words, they matter and they make a difference in your life. So if everything starts with a positive intention, why are we letting our mind movie make it a negative experience? Why are we letting our mind movies control what our future looks like? Because we were programmed to, right? So what do you do when something's on the TV that you don't like to watch? You change the channel, right? You change the program. That's all you have to do within yourself. And it is easier said than done because it takes time and it takes practice and you have to hold yourself accountable for it. But it's not impossible at all. It's a very doable thing. Look at where in your life you're putting out those negative programs that you have known your whole life that you were programmed to know, and start reframing them, right? Start changing your state of mind about them. So, again, with the money, instead of I can't do that, I'm poor, I can't afford that, let's work towards, I'm building my financial stability. I'm saving to be able to do this. There is a way for me to figure that out. That's one I hear a lot that just absolutely drives me crazy. People are like, well, I can't do anything. Well, actually, you can do something, right? And the more you sit there and say you can't do anything, the less likely you are to do anything. The more likely you are to stay in that negative program and watch that horrible movie that's on your TV. So the reality is you don't have to have magic. You don't have to have $1 million and you don't have to have everything figured out in the world. You just have to change the channel. And once you change that channel, you can start seeing things go a little bit better. You can start seeing things build up on themselves. You can start to see your world respond to the way you're expecting it to be. Right. So change your state of mind. Um, Teach your nervous system. So here's something else, all right? We talk about anchoring in NLP. So we've been programmed all these things throughout our whole lives. So maybe when you see a dog, you get anxious because you were bit by a dog when you were a kid. All right. So you're carrying that with you. Every time you see a dog, you get anxious because you're worried about you might get bit because you got bit before. When you see something nice at the store and you're like, oh, I love that, but I could never afford that. Right. Change your programming. So what we do with an anchor is we use an anchor to start helping us change that. So to set an anchor, what you have to do is pick something, pick a gesture. That way it's something that you have with you all the time. Maybe touch your thumb and your finger together would be a good gesture. Or maybe touch your temple would be a good gesture. Or maybe touch your chin or touch your third eye up here. Whatever gesture you want to pick a gesture, okay? And then we are going to set a recall moment to it. So whatever it is that you're working on right now, we're going to use finance, for example. Okay. Every time you catch yourself saying, I can't afford that, you're going to do your gesture and you're going to reset with your, I'm saving to be able to afford that. Right. So we're going to start changing our thought process. Every time you acknowledge, every time you say something that is negative programming, you're going to anchor yourself with whatever gesture that is. And you're going to tell yourself, maybe it has to do with anxiety. Maybe it's going to be, instead of getting anxious and worried and spiraling out of control, I am going to just breathe. All right. So then I'm in a situation, I start to feel anxious. I'm going to go to my anchor. I'm going to reset myself. Okay. I don't have to spiral out of control. I am calm. I can handle this situation. I've been in many others. Right. So you're going to set that intention with that anchor. And what happens is you're actually you're reprogramming your nervous system. You're reprogramming your brain and you're reprogramming your body. So, you can do this with something really simple, like drink water to start to get that programmed in, right? Every time you go to drink water, use your anchor. Touch your temple, drink your water. Now your body's going to start to associate every time you move that, you do that gesture, whatever your gesture looks like, however you want to do it, make a fist, whatever gesture you want to do. You're going to start to teach your brain that when I do this, my body's automatically going to calm down and I'm automatically going to change the state of mind that I'm in. So I'm automatically going to go from not enough to enough and building. I'm going to change it from not healthy, from sick to healing. I'm going to change it from scared to safe. Okay. And we're reprogramming our body and our brain and our whole self on how to respond to situations. Um, so pick your gesture and pick your positive intention that goes with that gesture, whatever you need to work on, right? You can use this to break habits too. Uh, Maybe it's every time you get anxious or upset, you go in the kitchen and you start eating. Right? So maybe a good intention would be to touch your throat chakra. And then that hunger is going to go away because now you're like, am I hungry? Let me speak my truth here. I'm not hungry. I'm anxious. I'm not anxious. I'm healing. So you can use these anchors in a whole variety of different ways. Um, it's really a super fascinating. I was trying to figure out how to put all of this into 1 hour, and it was really, really hard for me to pick out and how to get that basics of all of NLP into 1 hour because it is such a big program. And so I kind of struggled with like, okay, what are we going to talk about? And these are kind of the 3 things that I thought would be the most beneficial for everybody was learning that anchor, learning that we're programmed and we can change the program just like you could change the TV channel. It starts with acknowledging the things that we're doing and then learning where that came from and changing our mindset. So, does that make sense though? Did you guys follow along? Did you follow along with that? Yeah. So, um, you can change your state of mind. When you change your state of mind, you are also changing your programming. So, a good example would be I'm gonna use my kid. All right. So say I'm tired, I'm cranky, I'm ready for bed. And my kid comes in, mom, 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 will you? Blah, 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 blah. Right. And I'm like, it's bedtime. So that's not going to be a very good interaction there, right? Because I'm ready for bed and she's all like hyped up and ready to go. So I have to acknowledge within self, okay, she's got a positive intention over here. She's not trying to mess with my bedtime. She's trying to get whatever good thing it is she's trying to get, and it really has nothing to do with me at all, and my programming says, "Kid, leave me the hell alone, I'm trying to go to bed," which is not necessarily an appropriate way to respond, but because of the state of mind I'm in, I'm tired, that's all I got, right? So a more appropriate response would be to anchor myself and say, "Okay, you're in a tired state of mind. I can't change my state of mind right now because I need rest. So, in order to change my state of mind, I'm going to have to rest. So, what I need to do is I need to respond in a positive manner. Dusty, honey, I am tired. I need rest. I would be glad to help you with this tomorrow. Let's reconnect then." Instead of arguing with her and yelling at her and, all these other things that can happen, I need to acknowledge what state I'm in and then respond appropriately. So, that goes for like if you're mad, right? If you're mad about something, if you're mad at somebody, it's not the time to talk about it. When you're mad, that is not the state of mind to discuss something and get to a good conclusion, whether it's agree or disagree or anything, right? When you're mad, you cannot think clearly. Your brain does not allow clear thinking because it is in go mode. It is in fight mode. So even if you're completely wrong in the situation, you're going to fight it to the death because you're pissed, and that's not a good state of mind to make any kind of decisions. So, what I like to teach kids when I do this kind of a class with kids, what I like to teach kids is to stop, right? Stop. So, whatever the situation is, stop. Take time for yourself. Close your eyes for a second. Take in a couple big breaths and ask yourself, what state of mind am I in right now? And what is the best way to handle this situation? All right. Because if you just instantly respond, it can go wrong real quick. And not because that's what you meant to happen, but because you're responding with programming that you've learned through your whole life, and you're not putting any thought into the entire situation, into how things happened, into what other truths there could be. Um, and you're just responding because you're mad. So learn to stop, right? Any kind of situation that makes you feel any kind of way, learn to stop yourself. That's where you're going to use that anchor, that gesture or that symbol, however, whatever you decide to do. Maybe put your hand on your heart, maybe put your hands together. Um, I usually go to my thumb ring, is my reset gesture, which I don't have a thumb ring on, so I just haven't had one for like a week. I still find myself going to that gesture, when I need to reset, I that's my gesture. That's my reset button. And I program myself very well to use that reset button. So if somebody frustrates me and I need to respond in a calm manner, I can just reset, let go of that frustration, let go of that programming, and handle the situation. All right. Because until you start making changes, things are going to stay the same. So figure out what is your baseline, what things are you responding to that you know for sure are programming? Start acknowledging the things that you're allowing old programming in your world. Is it relationships? Is it habits? Is it finances? Is it the way you respond to the people around you? What are these things that are programmed into you that it's time to make changes on? Start looking at those, start using your gestures, and start reframing, instead of, I can't do this, I'm learning how to do this. Instead of, I'm broke, I'm saving money, Um, we can't reprogram something if we don't know what the original program is. So it's really a lot of it is awareness, right? Learning the awareness of having these programs. Yeah, headphones and silence, yeah. And, the reality is, like, that's a program that isn't going to get you any kind of changes, that sends you into avoidance mode is what it does. That's avoidance mode, and that's the thing that we learn throughout our whole lives. Some people get the opposite reaction, right? Instead of wanting to go into avoidance mode and hiding from it and ignoring it, they want to get right in the middle and fight it. They're like, "Oh, yeah? Watch this." I was in a relationship one time with my, oldest daughter's dad, and we very much had that relationship. I'd be like, "Oh, you did something shitty? Well, watch this. I can out shitty you any day," and then he'd do the same thing. "Oh, well, you wanna be shitty like that? I can out shitty you any day," and he'd go and do something, and it was just nonstop. So we did the complete opposite of avoidance and we tried to, out argue each other and outdo each other and just not being good humans. It was not healthy. It was horrible. I don't know why we did it for so long. We did that for about 6 years. So it doesn't make it right. Yep. Yep. It doesn't make it right. Screaming back doesn't make it right. Avoiding the situation doesn't make it right. All you're doing is just following along with old programming. Most of the time, the reason we follow along with old programs is because we're afraid of change, right? The very most common reason across the board, not for one person, for all people, the most common reason we avoid changing our program is out of fear. All right. We're afraid that if we address this situation, we're going to be alone. We're going to not have anybody to love us anymore. That's a fear driven reason to do something, right? Um, we do it because we feel like we're not going to be anything by ourselves. How am I going to survive by myself? Right? That's a fear. So instead of getting out there and surviving by myself, I'm just going to avoid the situation and stay right where I'm at. It's always, not always, but a majority of the time it is a very much a fear-driven reason why we don't change the program that we have, right? Money is another one, interestingly enough. We don't change our mindset on money for fear of acceptance. So we think that, if I were to have all this money, then it could get taken away from me. So rather than worrying about somebody taking that away, I'm just not going to get it. And so these might sound like silly things, right? But it's a very real thing and it really does drive the way we think. It drives the way we respond and it drives the way we handle our life situations. So, you got to ask yourself, why do I keep allowing this pattern to happen? What is it that prevents me from wanting to make a change there? Right. So, we're recognizing the state that we're in. We're going to change that. There is a positive intention from the very beginning. There is a positive intention for the reason everybody does everything. It starts with a positive intention always. But what program do you have? What program have you been taught your whole life that you are still very stuck in? You're still watching that same movie and you're allowing it to affect you on a day-to-day basis. And I can say with confidence that more than likely it's fear. What is it you're afraid of? Ask yourself, what is it I'm afraid of? Why am I resisting to make these changes? Um, because they're necessary, for you to live your best life. You've got to figure those kind of things out. Now you can carry on. You can carry on with the current program that you have. That's always an option, right? But if you were super happy with your current program, you probably wouldn't be here right now trying to figure out how to make things different. So when we are doing this kind of work, it's not easy. And the hardest lessons in life are never the easy lessons, right? If it was easy, nobody'd need to learn it, right? It's not like turning a light on. Um, there's some deep down soul work that has to be done and some internal work to look at where did this thought process come from? Where did I learn that it was best to avoid the situation or to, you know, scream back and aggravate the situation? Where did that programming come from? Look at that first. See where that programming came from. Once you see where that programming came from, then it's a lot easier to start making little changes. Use your anchor, make your anchor, reframe yourself, put yourself in a different state. I'm working on getting the rights to one of the NLP programs so we can do a course in here. Um, so I'm not exactly sure how long that's going to take or what all that's going to involve, but I did go ahead and submit a request to the program that I did to get rights to use that program because I think it would be very beneficial for everybody. I know that it really made a lot of changes in my world, so like money was a big one for me. Man, I get some money, it's gone. I'm spending that shit, right? I had the hardest time saving money for anything. Like I couldn't save money up to save my life, right? You give me $10, it's going to be gone before the end of the day. And you give me $100, it's gone before the end of the day. Me being able to save money up was not ever a thing in my life until I started learning about NLP. And that's when my money situation started to change. That's when I learned that that comes from the programming that I've had my whole life, from the way that I was raised, from my dad always worked, my mom stayed home when I was growing up, and my dad would give, the bills were $100, he'd give my mom 95 and say figure it out. And so if I had money when I was a kid and my dad found out about it, he would need to borrow it and I wouldn't ever get it back. So I learned at a very young age that if I got money, I better spend it now because if I don't spend it, somebody else is going to spend it. Right? No point in saving money, no point in trying to save money. And I never understood that until after I started studying NLP. And since then, I have done amazing things with my finances. Before that, like I said, I couldn't, $10 was gone before the end of the day. Now I've got myself to a situation where not only can I save money, but I can plan ahead for things. I can budget. I can do things that I would not have been able to do had I have not gone through the process of learning that, right? Because my money would have just always been gone because I didn't think I could save money. There's not enough money to save. Well, really, it was my habits, it was my programming. And once I started changing that to, I can have these things, I can do these things. I just have to do these steps to get there. I can have that property that I want. I can have that building that I want. I can work from home. I can save my money. I can budget my money. I can make sure that I've got all my bills covered before the next month even gets here. you know? I don't have to wait till the day it's due to try to scrape up and scavenge up and get that bill paid. That's not really what I have to do. Just because that's what I was programmed as a child doesn't mean that's what I have to do. And I was able to start changing the way I looked at money. I was able to start changing the way I spent my money and the way that I used my money. And I was able to start getting myself into a much better financial situation. Had I known that my whole life, shit, I'd be paying you guys to be here right now because I'd just have it like that, you know, and that would be cool. But then again, those are the lessons that we all have to learn on our own, and each one of us has our own different lessons to learn, right? So, but money was a big one for me in this lifetime. And I mean, all the money I'd make, I'd go to work, I'd make $1,500, it'd be gone before the end of the next day. I go to work to make $10, it'd be gone before the end of the next day, you know? So I had to teach myself that that's old programming that I don't need anymore. And my thumb is my anchor. So, anytime I get money and I'm thinking about spending it carelessly, I'll ask myself, is that really what you want to do right now? You know? Aren't you saving for that property you want? Aren't you saving for that renovation you want? Don't you want floors in your house, my dear? Are you tired of the paint yet? Um, yeah, you're right. I don't actually want this stupid little thing I was getting ready to buy. I'm gonna put it back on the shelf. I don't need to spend my money right now because I can save my money. I can build up my own financial stability and I can do well for myself in finances. But I had to reprogram that, right? Because that was not the program I was given. So that's the other important thing, right? We're not here to blame the past because the past gives us lessons. So this is not about blame. It's not about they did this to me or they did that to me or how dare my parents act that way because now I have to act this way because my parents acted that way. You know, that's not where we're at here. It's not at all about blaming anybody or anything. It's not about blaming a time period. It's not about blame. It's about acknowledging this is where that came from. I understand that this is the situation that I was in. I accept that this was the situation that I was in. I am willing to make changes so that my situation can be different. My future is my choice. My future is not determined by my past. My future is my choice. And we choose how our future is going to be by existing in the moment and changing the program, right? If we don't like what's on the TV, change the channel because your future really can be an infinite possibility of different things. It doesn't have to be one thing, it can be whatever you want to make it. Literally, whatever you want to make it. Um, I think that's all I've got for NLP. Does anybody have any NLP questions? I will load my teacher guide for you too, because there are some more examples in here and some little journal prompts that you guys can work through. So I'll load that into the NLP for the day. That way you guys can go back and look at that. Um, but is there any questions before we end our NLP recording? Everybody good there? Okay. So that's it for NLP, everybody. Thank you so much.